My daddy's name is James Eddie Coyle, and my mother's name was Eula Lee Stovall Coyle. They married in 1903, I believe it was, and he was, she was 16 and he was 18, I believe it was. And they met here in Rowlett. She came from Smithfield, Texas, and her mother died when she was real young, and so she had to help raise the rest of the family there and take care of them, rather. And well, she grew a garden. She planted a garden and gathered the garden, and she'd can hog, and she'd can the meat, and then they had one milk cow, and she'd turn butter out of the butter, and we had homemade butter, and she did help a little girl that lived down below us there that didn't have a mother, and she would bring her by the house, or have her come by the house and get her ready to give her a bath and clothes and stuff, and get her ready to go to school, which she enjoyed. But they were just ordinary people. My sister, our sister, 7 years older than us, was the only one that was married there.
And then where was she married in the house?
And she came down the stairway, and it's right at the foot of the stairway that she was married.
Eula Marie.
Eula Marie.
Very good. And then Mr. Schrade, please tell us Mr. Coyle's impact on the city of Rowlett.
Well, he and his family set an example of the early day founding of Rowlett, and they lived the life of native citizens and lived a hard life, a hard-working life, and were some of the finest people in the world, and were so kind to their neighbors and others that they had a great impact on everybody around them. And they, everywhere they went, everything they'd done that I know of left a trademark of what wonderful people they were and how dedicated they were to the town of Rowlett. And they just lived a typical life of any hard-working farming people.
Very good. And what kind of farmer was he?
Well, he started out as a cot tenant. Well, first he started working on the farm, he and Miss Coyle, for day labor when they first married. And they worked for as little as 35 cents per day. And they worked along there for a while and began to accumulate a little bit of money and saved a lot, enough to get them a team of mules. And once you get a team of mules, then you could rent land from your neighbors, farmers, and they would let you work on a sharecrop basis of what we call third and fourth. At the end of the year, you would give your landlord a third of the corn and a fourth of the cotton. And they did that for several years until they bought them a cow or two and sort of got in the dairy business and started accumulating a little bit of money and finally got a stake or borrowed enough money to buy them a little piece of land to start out up on Liberty Grove and close to Liberty Grove and Merrick Road. And that's how they began their operation right there.
Very good. And why is it important to preserve the Coyle farmstead?
Well, it's such a symbol of real heritage. And to me, heritage is one of the greatest things in the world. It tells you how your ancestors and previous folks slaved and worked to make this good community for us to live in. And I think it should be studied and preserved in history so that children and others may come and look at that house and maybe study history in a museum, if possible, and tell what they went through, and that will give people more appreciation of what they earned for themselves. And I think it would be a vital part of the city as a landmark and something outstanding, just as all cities have outstanding aspects in their city. And to me, just like the water tower, for instance, that's a marker for Rowlett, the old water tower we saved, and which they played a vital part and helped save that. So it's just a symbol of heritage. It means an awful lot to any city to have a traditional early day frontier homestead like that in it.
Well, all I know, they like to work, and that's about all they did. If they weren't watching, they didn't even want TV to start out with, and finally the kids got together and bought them a TV, and Mom got glued to it then. But Papa enjoyed his rocker. That's all he ever did. Go to look at his cows every day and drove the pickup, and he'd play with the grandsons that helped him feed by taking off when they got out of the truck and make them run to get back on. Oh yes, she's a good cook, and she sewed and was. She's a hard worker. She just was busy all the time. I have the oldest one was Mattie Mae Taylor, and she died. I don't know what year, but she's 99 years old. And then my second one was Olga Richards, and she has passed away at the age of 94. And next one is William Coyle, and he was county commissioner for 2 years in Dallas County. 10 years?
Mm-hmm.
Well, 10 years down in District 2. There's two someplace. For 10 years, and he died. I believe he's 74 or 84. I don't know. I guess I better not say the ages. And then there was James Eddie Jr. and he's passed away on Christmas Day. Yeah, I looked at their ages the other day, but they were pretty young. Anyway, and then Yul Marie White, she married White. She was 7 years older than the last two, which is me. I was born first, Lorene and Florene twins. And she passed away, so I'm the only one left. Well, we started, I guess, when we met at the McEntees?
McEntee, yeah.
We met at the McEntees, and we'd go over there. That's about the only. Our parents were pretty strict. My parents were pretty strict, and so we just meet there. And then we married in 1946, wasn't it?
That's right.
Well, he had to go in and ask. He used to come to the house, and we'd go places. But then he went and asked my daddy and mother for my hand in marriage, which they don't do now, I don't imagine. But what did he tell you?
Said we're okay, but be sure you take care of our baby.
Oh.
And so we were married at Grace Methodist Church in Dallas, just in this study, just a family there in 1946. And well, before that, I was in college at TSCW. Well, I'd come home every 2 weeks. We would come, me and twin sister would come home every 2 weeks, but other times they would, Vernon and Jimmy would come up there to see us. But we had to be in by 11 o'clock at college, so they,
I thought it was 10 o'clock.
well, maybe it's 10 o'clock. It was a long time, different then. You had to wear hose after 6 o'clock. You know, they were pretty strict.
There was about 6 or 7 houses built around about the same time. There was the Coyle House and the Merritt House and the Oliver House and the Schrade House and the Connor House and Herforth House, and that was a sort of a period in there when the prosperity got a little bit better, and so they started building houses, and nearly all of them had large families, and they were all built somewhere between 1918 and 1926.
Is the Coyle House the last house standing, or are the other houses still?
No, there's still 2 or 3 left. The Merritt House is still standing, the Herforth House, and let's see.
Your dad's house been
The Herforth House has been remodeled, but it's still standing. And the Merritt House and Oliver House. That's about the only ones left.
Yours.
Huh?
Yours.
Yeah, the Schrade House, it's still standing. Oh, I have a great vision for Rowlett. If the town plays its cards right and practices good government, there's a great opportunity for Rowlett now. We're sitting here with DART coming in and 190 George Bush Freeway coming in, and this is the best opportunity they've ever had to really move. Of course, when the lake was built, that was our first opportunity to start growing and being somebody, and it gave us a good boost. But now we're facing one of the greatest opportunities we ever had, and I have a bright outlook on Rowlett's future. I just think it's going to be one of the finest cities in the state of Texas, and I just hope and pray that our council works with the people that's going to come in and try to settle here now and make our city grow. Well, to me, it's a symbol of heritage, hard work, good, dedicated people that gave most of their life to the building and developing of Rowlett. And if nothing else, that's a symbol that's well worth preserving and keeping just for that, because we all have studied history of famous homes and famous people and landmarks, and it's helped all of us in our education. And I think it will in the time to come, especially if the Coyle House can be made into partly a museum and a house, a symbol where children can be taken and toured and study it and see that and understand what people really went through in the early days to pave the way for them to have this good life now. And I know it's the Coyle House and the Coyle family has meant an awful lot to us and our family, and helped us all through the years. And I could name you dozens of people during my lifetime that the Coyles touched and helped. They were helpers from day one. And Mr. Coyle was, both of them was 2 of the sweetest, dedicated people, and Mr. Coyle was a stout, tall man, and a man of great stature. And when he said something, you could bet everything you had on it because it meant something, it would be true. And then lots of people went to that man for help over the years, and he helped them get a foothold or to get a new start in life. And he after he got into the gin business, well, he did a tremendous amount of help to the farmers and whatnot, which actually we were a farming community up until in the late 60s when we got Lake Ray Hubbard. And this was cotton country practically all over. And he and my father both were identified as important farmers and cotton ginners in Rowlett and in Mr. Coyle in the whole county. He was recognized as a farmer of the year in the whole Dallas County. And Mr. A.B. Jolly, county agent in Dallas, he worked with Mr. Coyle, and they worked together in a cooperation with the government programs to improve land all over this city and teach farmers how to conserve their land and how to grow. And he never got a dime for it. He just goodwill. And he used to sit on those gin steps up there at the office on the bench. He sat there, sitting there, and many a person come by, and he'd give them a handout. I don't care if it's a child or whether it's a hobo or who it was. If they came by and asked and needed some help, he was 99% of the time he'd help them. And Ms. Coyle, like Lorene mentioned, the little girl down the road, she was good, active in church and school all through the years and participating in programs and helping the people. You never did recognize it, really. They didn't want any publicity. They didn't want to be talked to, brag about anything. They just wanted to help their fellow man. And that's just the kind of people they were. And I think everybody should always be able to look back upon the Coyle House as one of the founding families of Rowlett and one of the best signs of good heritage we ever had. In 1927, he and his gin partner negotiated with the power company. Let me start back. At that time, the main transmission line run north of Rowlett, of the city downtown. It was about a half mile up here to it. And they didn't have electricity downtown. They had lamp lights and kerosene lanterns and stuff like that. And but in 1927, Mr. Coyle and Mr. Oliver negotiated with a light company to bring electricity from the power line down to the downtown Rowlett if they would put their gins, cotton gins, over on electricity instead of using steam power. And that's what they done. They put in all electricity and took out the steam boilers and the wood burning furnaces and all that stuff. And that gave Rowlett an opportunity to have electricity downtown. And of course later on now, that's just one of the miracles they did. In 1952, Mr. Coyle and let's see, in 1952, Rowlett Incorporated, in which Mr. Coyle was one of the first to serve on the council. And in 1954, he and J.H. Bueller, who was a general merchandise man and also our first mayor, they bought the bonds that nobody else would buy, and bought the bonds so we could drill a water well in Rowlett and have sanitary water. Up to that point, we had cisterns and a few old wells around that weren't much good, and then some people haul water from Garland. But in 1954, Mr. Coyle and Mr. Bueller bought those bonds and drilled that water well, and Mr. and Mrs. Coyle gave the land to drill the well on and to build the water tower on. And they were just always giving. Anytime there was a need, they was ready. If it was right away or whatever it was, or people with disaster, well, you could always turn to the Coyle and get help. But that was some of the good things he done, and of course, after they got the water tower, well, then we got into a couple of years or so after that, we started out and put in a sewer system. Mr. Coyle was always dedicating right away and helping to build a line out this way so far to get to some unfortunate person that couldn't pay for it. They done that all over town, and there wasn't no end of what they'd done for this city and this community. And the schools, of course, they gave property for the Coyle Middle School, most of the property for Coyle Middle School, in which the Coyle School is named after him, J.E. Ed Coyle Middle School. And there's just so many cases and so many things that he's done that's never been mentioned very much that we all know about, the people that were here. And it's that the Coyle House can stand for a symbol and a remembrance of all that goodness. And that, to me, that's the real meaning of having it sit there and be fixed up and preserved.
Mm-hmm. And then you told me the story before about, I think it was during the Depression, when people were starting to lose their farms, and Mr. Coyle bought their property so they could still live on it. Can you tell me that story again?
Yes, during the Depression, like you said, there was a big amount of the farmers went broke. My daddy was among them. He lost a couple of farms too, and Lorene and I bought one of them back, so I know a little about that. But that happened all over town, and the loan companies were foreclosing and taking the land, and they couldn't get anything out of it at all. They were owed so much money, you know. They were just going to take their land, and they were out and put out in the weather. Well, Mr. Coyle and them had been in the dairy business and farming and ginning, and with a large family, they had a good workforce, and they had begun to accumulate a little bit of money that they could do things with. And these farmers would come to him and beg him to buy their land or their loan and give them a few extra dollars to move on or maybe to relocate. Well, in many cases, he done that, and at the same time, he would turn around and rent the land back to the persons that they were fixing to be evicted. He'd turn around and rent the land back to them and let them stay there and make a sharecrop, what we call a sharecrop. And sometimes they'd stay there a few years, long enough to get back up on a footstep to move out somewhere and start over again. But that happened in a lot of cases. And Mr. Coyle told me many times, and other people too, he never asked a person to buy their land. They all came to him begging him to help get a little bit out of their land and maybe let them stay there a year, 2 or 3 years, and sharecrop or something to maybe get a foothold to overcome the Depression period. And he did that in a lot of cases, and all together, I think he accumulated approximately 4,000 acres of land. And he never asked a man yet to buy his land. Somebody always went to him begging him to help. And of course, he had his dairy and the gin business, and like I said, the farming operation, and the bigger he growed and went along, well, naturally, the more the family prospered, and it gave him the power to do that. Mm-hmm. Thank goodness and it just served a wonderful purpose in doing that.
And he thought enough of his children, his 8 children. In 1958, they divided up their land, and they tried to value the different plots to equal what they did. And then we kids got to draw to see which one we got. And so that's why we're here. We got this one where Walmart is, and a little bit down on Rowlett Road, 116 acres. And so I appreciate that.
They had one of the best most ideal estate plans of anybody I ever heard of. And I've heard other people say this too. And he went and worked it out. He and his oldest son, William was commissioner for 10 years, and William headed up the CCC Corporation and the government agency in Mesquite that worked with him on a lot of the land and whatnot. And
They left the home place, the house, and 1 acre of land and 31 acres of land behind it and 800 acres over at where Springfield development is they willed that to the 16 grandchildren. And so when they passed away, sister and I were executors, and we didn't know how to divide up the house, so we let whoever wanted in the family, the grandchildren, to draw for the house. Then there was our 2 boys, James and Stephen, and Billy Coyle, that wanted the house. And of course Billy Coyle got the house, and he lived there for several years, and then decided he wanted to move to Gilmer. And so he sold it to his sister, Susan Coyle Kirby, and their daughter lived there till they moved the house. Well, there wasn't nothing here but outdoor movies to go to.
There was a terrible lot of difference. Now, during our period, everybody had to work in the house. I don't care how small you were, or whether you was a girl or boy or what. Everybody worked on the farm. You had to. You had cattle to feed and take care of, and cows to milk, hogs to feed, and chickens to feed, and cotton to pick, and cotton to chop. All the families, all them kids worked. And it was nothing, we knew that. It wasn't nothing new to anybody. We just growed up in it. And lots of hard work, I mean. And now the children have no idea, I don't think, what real hard work is. And we didn't have it, I know I didn't. We didn't have any money to spend. Daddy and them were just scraping the bucket trying to live, and lived off of eggs and butter and milk and the hog meat that we raised. That was the main way of making a living. And there was no money back, especially during the Depression. And we didn't have any money to hire anybody, and Daddy wouldn't let us go out and work for nobody because he needed us there on the farm or do our own work. No transportation. My daddy didn't have a car. He had one before out barn run through the garage, and he never did drive anymore. But didn't have any car, and to go anywhere, you just walked the mud roads. In my first 2 years in school, I walked from over Schrade Road to Rowlett School, across through the bottom of the mud. And it was several years before they put in buses and stuff, and then they just come part of the way up to the highway, and you'd have to walk up and get on the bus. And I think she had to walk to school all them years from her house up to the schoolhouse. And and as far as sports and whatever, we played ball or rolled wheels down the road or went swimming or hunting. That's about it. And she mentioned the movies. In the later years, there was a company up at Wiley, the Green Brothers, that had an old truck with a box built on the back and a projector in it. They would come down Rowlett to the square and set up a screen out there on one end of the lot, and they'd park sideways with this old truck and put up some what we call chicken roosts. Had some boards on some scaffold, and for a dime you'd go up there and sit on there, and at night they'd show a movie. It was silent movies. They'd show the picture and then they'd show the writing. There wasn't any voice to it at all, called silent movies. But that was in the better years, and that was sort of a treat to get a hold of a dime and get to go see the show. And of course they had boxing matches on the square, which that didn't cost us anything. And ball games was a big sport because didn't cost anything much for them. And her brother had a cottonseed truck. He hauled cottonseed for his daddy. And Rowlett and Tripp and Pleasant Valley and several of the outlying districts around, they all had ball teams. And J.E. had a cotton truck. He'd let us get on his truck for a dime, and he'd let us ride to Wiley or Rockwell or where we was going to the ball game if we managed to get the dime. And otherwise, we had to walk unless you hook up the mules to the wagon and ride in the wagon. And that's the way we went fishing a whole lot. Or we'd come to Rowlett or go to Rockwell to get groceries. We did wagon and mules, ride wagon. But it's pretty rough.
A lot different. And were y'all there the day they moved the Coyle House?
Oh, yes.
Can you tell us about that experience?
Well, we got pictures of it in the scrapbook, and it was
That was
very way that moved it real smooth, you know. You wouldn't think they could move that big a house.
Just for our audience, how did they move the house?
We thought surely they would go in there and move it like they had moved some buildings around over the community. They'd tear them all to pieces trying to move them, you know. But that country that company had some sophisticated equipment that I never saw in my life. They had automatic load levelers. They jacked that house up and pushed those wheels and dollies under that house, and they had big hydraulic jacks with automatic controls on them, and they hooked up to that house. And when they left that site to go down to where it is now,
First they took the sleeping porch off of
yeah, they took the sleeping porch off and separated it. But they said the man set a glass of water up on top of the chimney of that house, and it never spilt a bit of that water until they got down to where it is, and they hit some kind of power line or something and tilted the glass of water. That house stayed perfectly level from the time it left till they set it down. All hydraulic, automatic, technical hydraulics that kept it level. It was so amazing, and I just knew they'd tear it all to pieces, but they didn't, and it was really an interesting experience watching them move that house.
And they dug up the storm cellar and moved it all in one piece. It weighed 70,000 pounds, and they said it weighed more than the house.
Dug a hole and put it back just like it was. You can't. It never was bothered inside. It's one solid room storm house, and of course they moved the curb and all for the well, but they didn't move the well, but they moved the pump house and the curb, and they did to me they did a marvelous job. I know it cost lots of money, but it was worth every penny of what they done. It's just one of the unbelievable things. But I talked to one or two of the men that was working on the job, and he said, "Well, we've moved houses with the car still in the garage, never did bother the car." And I said, "Well, I'll believe it. I believe you'd move anything now."
That's the storm cellar's where Mama kept some of her canned goods down there for it to keep you cool. But and we would go to Mama and well, I think Sister and I were the only ones left in the family that was at home. When the clouds come up, we'd go, but my daddy never would go.
He'd go in there and go to bed. But 1947, we stood on the steps of that cellar and watched the tornado go through south of Rowlett. Went across there and cut a strip about a mile wide all the way across East Fork Bottom to the Rockwell Hill, and then turned left and went up through there. And it destroyed the homes, picked up mules and carried them through the air, and pulled all the fish out of the sloughs and water out of the wells, and it got the Baptist church and the school down there on Garner Road. And after that storm was over, the Baptists went over on Dow Rock Road and built them another church. 3 years later, in 1950, another tornado come through and got that church again and carried it across that bottom and up through there.
Tell them about the house.
And
The house where the people
where
Ben
his family named Ben Perez and his wife and 2 children lived down in about where almost where Interstate 30 is now. And they lived in a house there on a farm down the bottom. And the tornado, they saw it coming through, and Ben and his wife and the 2 girls got together and locked arms in the front of the fireplace. And so help me God, that storm took that house, took the floor out from under them, and left them laying right there by that fireplace. And the only thing that hurt was this bruised Ben's knee. Carried all that house across the hill and across the bottom in splinters. He picked up his mules, took one of them, and took him up on the hill where the Elgin Robinson Park is now, and set him down in front of Mr. Lewis Ross's house. And Lewis said, I was standing on the front porch, Mr. Vernon, said, I looked up, and here come that mule sailing through the air, and said, when he hit the ground running. And it picked the man's chickens. Now, I'd heard that, and I didn't believe it, but I do now. It picked his chickens just like Mama would put them in that bucket of scalding water, and clean. And picked up fish. It scattered fish all over the country. It'd pick them up in that slough that storm did. Carried across the country. But that was the greatest miracle I ever saw. I've seen a lot of miracles, but I've never seen nothing like that. And it drove grass stems and pieces of tin in those trees down there in that Elgin Robinson Park. Drove them into the trunks of that trees, and it was still there up until 7, 8 years ago, I guess. The last time or maybe 10 years ago that I was up there, the signs were still in that tree. Them pieces of tin, though, just put them in there like a wedge. And then the one came through in 1950. It was just as bad. But anyway, we stood on the Storm House doors down Mr. Coyle and watched both of us. Well, I just like to tell them, emphasize to them that how grateful we are and how lucky we are to have had such a heritage and a background that provided us with this wonderful life we got and the wonderful environment and the city of Rowlett. We love this city dearly. It's been good to us, and I think it'd be good to anybody else that'll put their heart into it. And I feel like that people really needs to preserve and take care of things like what we're talking about now. That's just as vital as having a city hall or a courthouse or a water tower or a city park or anything else. It's the Coyle House, to me, means just as much as any of those. And I think it's a real asset, and I think if we show our appreciation, I think we'll build a city of love and cooperation and appreciation in the future. And we tell our children that too, constantly.
Mm-hmm. That's some good advice.
You can cut this off and I'll tell you what.
You don't have to cut it off, I'm telling you.
Well, the reason why we decided to give the money that we did to stabilize the church, the house, I said it broke my heart to read in the paper that they were going to just do the roof and put plywood all around it, and I knew that's the way it would stay. So
yeah,
that's the reason why we did it.
Well, definitely I would like to see a part of it, maybe a room or 2 rooms, made into a museum. Then we'd like to have a little meeting room or a chapel that we could have weddings or whatnot, where the old living room and dining room is. And then you need to have a business office somewhere in there, with either a city business office or one for the Historical Society or something like that. But I think it would be best if the city could have an office there. That way you would have more security and maybe have some way of being an asset to the city to where they could get some return off of the house being there, instead of just being a total expense of the park department. But it can be made into a wonderful vital, really beneficial building if it's handled right. And we were afraid that that was not going to happen, and that's why Lorene and I got together, and our children got together, and we gave her the money to give to the city. We didn't give her all of it, we gave her some of it.
There's
And-
mine too.
Yeah,
You didn't have to give it to me.
that's right. And anyway, we raised $150,000 to stabilize that house, instead of letting them put plywood up on it and sit there for 10 years and maybe burn down by somebody. Now we're hoping and praying that the community and the city and everybody else will join hands together and preserve that house and make a nice museum, something to really be proud of. And a lot of cities have museums and historical houses. It's really interesting. Dallas has got a bunch of them in the old City Park, and we went to New Orleans and seen some in different places over the country, and it brings back a lot of memories, and it's educational to see what. I remember going down in Dallas. We went on a tour down there one day in some of the old homes in Dallas that I saw plumbing and the stuff that was over 100 years old in those houses. You just couldn't believe it's such awkward stuff in a house. And that to me, that's just as educational as any book you can read.